And we are live.
Welcome everyone. It's Thursday afternoon, and since it's Thursday afternoon, you know what time it is. It's hanging with Harley, and we have none other than Harley Schlanger himself joining us yet again. We couldn't get Roger Stone on today, but we are working on getting him back. There was an issue with scheduling, but we'll have that all wrinkled out, and we'll have the dynamic duo of Harley and Roger together at the same time, and that will be a treat. We'll announce it when that happens. Harley, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, V. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, man. I'm watching all the rhetoric happening in North Korea. I'm seeing how this is escalating. Um, you know, I'm thinking maybe the removal of Kim could be a possible good thing. I think I knew about a year and a half ago the Chinese were falling out of favor with the North Koreans, and I think the recent assassination of Kim Jong Un's own brother, when they sprayed, he had female assassins spray him with VX gas in an international airport.
Yeah,
I think that
that's
was it
sending
for
a
China.
message.
Yeah, exactly. So the partnership for the new Silk Road, they're starting to see that North Korea is a viable partner to say the least. So I think this is something that the Russians and the Chinese could welcome is a Kim Jong Un free North Korea.
Well, this is something that has to be handled very delicately.
Yeah.
And, we had an opportunity in the late 90s to get an agreement with North Korea to not pursue nuclear weapons. And this was something that was in motion, and it was sabotaged when Bush came in. And from that time to the present, what we're finding is if you wave a spear in their face, they're going to wave three back at you.
Right.
And I think this rhetoric that they're going to take out Hawaii or they're going to strike back, it's hard to know exactly what's real, but you have to take the threat seriously. But the most significant development here is the Trump Xi Jinping relationship. And I think Trump realizes that the Chinese are serious about working with us
Yeah.
on dealing with this. The Chinese actually had a proposal that there be a railroad from the tip of South Korea through North Korea and then through Siberia into Russia into Europe. So, and this would benefit South Korea enormously and obviously would benefit the North. The question is there a way you can reach an agreement and find some sane people in North Korea? So the most important thing on the Korean Peninsula is the Trump-Xi Jinping relationship. Now, it's obviously the same thing, Trump's relationship with Putin, which has not developed largely because of the neocons, the neoliberals, the media have done everything they could to sabotage it.
Sure.
Now, I don't think that you can write that off. In fact, I think we're seeing some signs of reopening of discussion. The memorandum of deconfliction and of cooperation in the skies over Iraq and Syria has been renewed. There is coordination again between Russian and U.S. forces in the area, air forces.
Yeah.
You have this crazy guy Erdogan. I don't know quite what to make of him.
The Sultan.
Well, he went in and bombed the Kurdish forces that the U.S. is arming and training. So he's a little bit of a strange ally. And clearly he's playing Putin against the U.S. and the U.S. against Putin. I'm expecting something from the Turkish military at some point on this, but with friends like that, you don't need enemies, they say.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty funny. It's a known fact that the Turks hate the Kurds, and the last thing they want is a Kurdish state being formed near their borders. Is something that they just simply do not want.
Well, the only way you could deal with the situation is to have stable governments in Iraq and Syria, because the Kurdish territory goes into both Iraq and Syria as well as Turkey. And you probably could get some kind of an agreement for regional autonomy within those countries. You don't really want them carved up. And that's one of the things that, if you go back to the neocon perspective, the Project for a New America Century, their view of how you could destabilize Iraq, Syria, Iran, and Turkey would be to promote Kurdish autonomy or Kurdish independence. So they would like nothing better. The Kurds have a legitimate beef with the Turks and with these other countries. But the problem is, as long as you have a destabilization going on from terrorism in Iraq and Syria, you can't deal with it. And
Yeah.
this is where you've got to look at these things from the top. This goes back, by the way, to Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Yep.
His whole
Spoke about that
theory
this
of
morning.
the arc of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
You use these unstable areas on the southern underbelly of the former Russian Empire as a way of keeping things destabilized in Russia. And of course, with the Chechens and the South Ossetians and others, you've got an active playing field for these kind of British intelligence operations.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You have drug money to fund it.
And you said it best. I mean, Brzezinski also talked about pivot points, and some of those pivot points he named as Ukraine, Syria, and he even mentioned North Korea in his book, the 1997 book, The Grand Chessboard. And it's pretty funny, to say the least, that when you look at Ukraine, it has become the very fruition of what a lot of these Western meddlers do, and it's turned Ukraine into a failed state. It is a narco state at this point with human smuggling.
Yeah. Well, actually, look at all the hotspots that exist right now.
Yeah.
One of the reasons they exist is that honest efforts at solving them have been sabotaged repeatedly. And they exist largely to keep Western governments in a constant war situation.
Yeah.
Now, we have a potential with a conference coming up in May 14th and 15th in China for the whole world to come together around the Belt and Road, the New Silk Road. The Chinese now call it the One Belt, One Road.
Yeah.
But this is a reality. The spending on this is significant. The cooperation among governments is improving. The Indians and the Chinese are solving their regional differences. I was at a conference in Hamburg over the last couple of days, and you see the Africans coming to Germany saying, we want your technology and engineering, your machines, but we don't want your arrogance and your banking conditionalities. The Chinese are coming in. And the Africans were telling me, look, the Chinese have narrowed the gap between the quality of their products and the quality of the Germans.
That's huge. That is
It's
saying a lot.
Yeah, there's a new dam being built in Nigeria, and the Nigerians already have a dam that was built by the British. And the Nigerian mining minister said the Chinese quality is extraordinary, and they're training Nigerian workers not just to construct it but to run it.
Wow.
So you see this potential for a new paradigm. Now Germany has a need to find new export markets, especially with Europe tanking and continuing to collapse. But also the situation in Germany is highly unstable, not just because of the refugees, but because you have an old population and a younger population that's not really integrated into the German economic machinery, you might say. So they're on borrowed time. Now you also in Germany have this total commitment to green technology.
Which is ridiculous.
Well, at some point they're going to discover that in Germany the sun doesn't shine that much, and you're not going to be able to run an industrial economy on solar power and wind power. Now they're basically figuring they can buy nuclear power, nuclear generated energy from the Czech Republic, or hydropower from Austria, or nuclear power from France. But they're kidding themselves if they think that they're going to be a powerhouse with windmills and solar and geothermal. And they're trying to sell this to the Africans, and the Africans are saying, we have solar power. That's how our plants grow. We want industrial technology.
These people are crazy, man. They're absolutely nuts. I mean, look what happened under Rajoy in Spain, where they went for this whole green economy. For every new green job they created, they lost 10 to 15 industrial jobs in the process. It's ridiculous.
Well, one way to have a green economy is to shut down all industry and don't heat homes and buildings. I mean,
what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, and it will happen in the United States. The
Yeah,
U.S. electricity grid is old, it needs repair, and the idea that you can just plug a windmill into a factory is ridiculous. So what we're looking at on this is what's the bigger intention?
mm,
There's an effort to deindustrialize the Western world with the
correct.
idea that you can replace Western production to some extent with cheap production from cheap labor in the developing sector. But you can't sustain a population of over 7 billion people with that. And underneath this deindustrialization has always been the argument that the earth cannot sustain the level of population that's here. And so war is, as Bertrand Russell said, war has been disappointing in its ability to limit population.
Right.
Therefore, even with these wars, uh, people still have hope. There's still optimism. People are still having children. Maybe not in Denmark and Germany. In Denmark, they initiated a campaign called "Screw for Denmark" to try
Screw
to,
for Denmark.
yeah, to encourage new children, and it apparently is working.
Well, I
I think
mean, the
they
Russians
expanded
did something
Denmark.
similar. Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and advertisements on television for it.
Wow. I mean, they got to do something. I mean, it's literally, Europe is dying. And I guess some Europeans are trying to wake up that having migrating masses of barbarians coming in from North Africa and the Middle East might not be a good idea.
Especially when you mix them with the barbarians running the banks in those countries, because
Exactly.
they
It's a
want the
volatile
volatility.
concoction.
Yeah, they want the volatility.
Yeah.
They are the whole what's being discussed now is the Western idea of democracy dead? You
Mm.
hear this at these conferences that are we moving into a post-democratic era? And you see some of the elites talking about Le Pen being a fascist and this one being right-wing populism, but the real fascism always came from the corporations. They would find gutter level people like a Hitler
Yes.
and a Himmler and that whole crowd to run it. But they were put in power through a coup that was pulled off, coordinated by the Bush family, the Rockefeller family, Montague Norman, the chairman of the Bank of England. They
Sure.
all wanted Hitler in because they wanted Hitler to put Schacht in, because Schacht was the austerity guy, Hjalmar Schacht. He's someone who was tried at Nuremberg and for some reason was acquitted. And he wrote a autobiography called The Wizard. But this is a character who was the banker's man in Hitler's government.
Yeah.
Hitler ran slave labor camps before they started the mass executions. So you have this mythology that a populist nationalist is a fascist, whereas a corporate globalist who's actually killing millions of people with their policies is a good guy.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly correct, man. What else is going on right now? What's on your radar, Harley? I mean, we've got all these things happening. The world is in a bit of a confusing state, as it would be, especially in the West. What's on your target points? The last 2 minutes we have.
Well, two things. One, Trump needs to continue to work with Xi Jinping of China, and he needs to
Yeah.
get to see Putin as soon as possible. The fact that Christopher Steele came out and basically admitted that his whole thing was concocted uh, should put an end to some of this Russia stuff, but it won't, because that's all
No.
they've got.
Well, they're insatiable. They'll never be satisfied.
Well, but they're using it for a purpose, and the
Yeah.
purpose is to keep Trump off balance and to keep him looking for someone who will bail him out, namely the old elites.
Yep.
And that's where you see the Syria thing as a potential problem. North Korea can be geared up, or even Iran. So he's got to meet with Putin, and we've got to address that problem. And it would be very good, in fact, if Trump went to the May 14th and 15th road conference in China. The other thing, and I'm sure you're watching this and getting a kick out of it, people are going crazy on Wall Street about Glass-Steagall. The Senate bill was introduced last week. Bernie Sanders signed on a couple of days ago.
Nice. Good.
You've got even though I don't trust him, Gary Cohn, the national economic advisor to Trump, talking about Glass-Steagall. And the Financial Times ran 3 articles in a week
Hmm.
attacking Glass-Steagall. And they start the articles by saying it'll probably never pass, but. And the question you have to ask, if it'll never pass, why 3 articles? They had
Hmm.
another one today, an editorial today. The Wall Street Journal had an op-ed yesterday attacking Glass-Steagall. The Washington Examiner, magazines, newspapers, all with Wall Street connections going crazy because Glass-Steagall would do something that no other legislation that's being put forward would do, which it would force banks out of being a source of liquidity for speculation. And secondly, this is something that most people don't understand. It would mean that if you separate investment banks from commercial banks, there'll be no bailout of the investment banks. If
Right.
they invest in risky areas and lose, they have to eat the losses. And in fact, they'll have to eat the losses now because the corporate debt is growing. I just heard something. The commercial mortgage securities market is now at $14 trillion,
Yeah.
mortgage-backed securities on commercial real estate. And we're at a point where commercial space is collapsing because the retailers are going out of business at record numbers.
Yes.
Now, some people say, well, gee, that's too bad. We won't have a Sears. We won't have a J.C. Penney. But what about your pension fund that's invested in commercial backed mortgage securities, uh, invested in these things? So I think we're moving closer to a collapse because of these things. And the momentum toward Glass-Steagall is impressive, but we've got to push it further. So I would encourage people to get on the horn with your congressman, talk to your friends and neighbors, set up a study group to figure out what is Glass-Steagall and why was this such an important point for Trump during the campaign and why is he continuing to talk about it? And let's get it done.
Absolutely, Harley. I totally agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
If you do that, you can postpone the tax reform because I think the tax reform that seems to be coming out is a bit of a mess. I
Yeah.
don't think it's certainly not going to lead to an industrialization or reindustrialization of the United States. You need a shift in the banking situation, and you need an emphasis on the front end technologies that would be brought in through infrastructure.
Yep, absolutely. And we need to have these ridiculous regulations and these hidden taxes like Obamacare gone and done away with.
Yeah, and we can do that, but I think first things first, straighten out the too big to fail problem, the debt problem. I was just talking with a very prominent economist today from Switzerland, and he said, why aren't people talking about the uh, auto debt, the way the auto debt has been securitized, and
Oh my
student loans
God.
and credit
Right.
cards? He said he hadn't thought about the commercial property debt, but he said this is the biggest bubble the world has ever seen. How can
Yeah.
it keep going?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, Harley. It all we've done is blown bubbles in every possible sector. And then we call it an economy. It's
Well, at least we see that Obama is showing his true self by charging $400,000 to speak before the survivors of Cantor Fitzgerald.
well, I'm sure that $400,000 is going to a good use, Harley. Maybe another summer home,
It's probably going to organize riots at the White House.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah. Obama's buddies
Absolutely
were
correct.
saying, "Oh, he's apolitical. He's resting. He's not doing anything." Right.
It's unreal. Yeah, he's just taking it easy in the shadow White House,
That's
building a
right.
war chest.
Yeah. And then, actually, one other thing we should just mention.
Yeah.
Uh, this is really important. This week, the defense minister of Britain, Fallon, said that the British are prepared to use nuclear weapons in Korea. And the British Attorney General put out a finding saying, even though that would be against international law,
Yes.
that shouldn't stop the British. So Theresa May's government is threatening to use nuclear weapons, saying that they wouldn't even necessarily have to coordinate it with the United States. So you actually
Wow.
see where these kinds of directionalities come from. It's still coming from London. And if Trump were to do anything, he should take a couple of nights and sit down and read through some of the material in the EIR, the Executive Intelligence Review, on the British,
Right.
because you can't trust the British ever.
Right.
The English people, fine, but the British oligarchy,
No.
they've never relinquished the idea that they're going to control the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. That's very true. Very true. With that being said, Harley, we have come to the end of the broadcast, sir. How can people follow you? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, LaRouchePub.com is the place to get updates on a daily basis. We put up videos. We're putting up these 1 to 2 minute videos each day now on the leading developments. That's also where people can sign up to get our daily briefing lead for free on the LaRouchePack.com. And if people want to contact me, they can always send something to my email address, which is harleysch@gmail.com. I'm always happy to hear from Rogue Money people because they're usually very sharp questions and comments.
Thank you so
I
much,
say
Harley.
usually. I say usually.
Usually. Harley, thank you yet again, man, for gracing us with your presence. You are, sir, the voice of reason in a chaotic world. And with that being said, again, folks, tune here next week at the same time. We're hanging with Harley. And if we get Roger Stone on anywhere between now and then, we will alert you guys. We'll tweet it out. So follow us on Twitter at The Rogue Money. So this way you'll know when Harley and Roger will be on at the same time. Thank you all again for tuning in, and we will be back again soon. Take care.